Hello, today we're going to focus on a lesson on character development, and we're going to be studying how characters change. The essential question I want you to think about as you're watching this video, and also as at the end of it, is how does analyzing a character's growth or change help us as readers? Now I want you to think about your favorite Disney movies and all of the Disney protagonists. Can you think of one thing that they have in common? Well, if you think about it, they have all changed throughout the story, and we're going to see a quick recap of the big changes that have happened. Some examples. Okay, there were some examples of how the Disney characters have changed. And just like Disney characters, real people change too. And we're going to look at to see how some of our fellow classmates have changed. Here we have some of our fellow classmates a couple of years ago. And if you take a look at them, you can see that they look very different. And they also, if you think about it, they are a little different, sometimes a little, sometimes a lot, because everyone changes over time. You think back, are you the same person you were a year ago, 2 years ago? Most likely not. Here we have some more students. And here we have a classmate, but it's actually me. Here I was as a little baby, and you can see I look very different, and I am a very different person now than I was then. Everything changes over time. Phones, computers, cars, radios, and characters and stories change too. Here we have some of our characters from the stories we've read this year, and there are a couple from last year. All of these characters have changed. If you look at the character traits they showed at the beginning of the story, it's different from the character traits that they showed at the end. We're going to focus on learning how characters change. And when you learn how characters change by figuring out the character traits that the characters have in the beginning, and then figuring out the character traits they have at the end, and comparing the two. Now, when we want to figure out a character trait, remember, we go to the beginning of the story usually, and there the reader learns the character's strengths and weaknesses. We learn about the character by things the author tells us. Either the author will tell us directly, or the author will give us clues about character traits because of things the character says, things the character does, and things the character thinks. Near the middle of the story, events occur that affect the character and make them think about life differently. This is the plot. So here's usually where the conflicts happen, problems, and these have a big impact on the character. At the end, we also again take time to look at the character. we identify the character's traits at the end by things the author tells us directly and looking at what the character says, does, and thinks. If you look at how they act in the beginning and at the end, that will show you where the character has changed. Now, most stories contain a lesson that the characters learn and grow from. This is part of the theme. Characters often change, grow, and learn lessons as a result of the events and conflicts within a story. So if you think about it, analyzing characters helps us understand the character better. They also help us understand the plot of the story better, the events that happen. It also helps us understand the conflicts of the story. And finally, it gives us a better, deeper understanding of the theme. So it really impacts all parts of understanding the story. Now, I want you to think about your favorite characters from movies that you have seen and books that you have read. Think about their thoughts and actions and how they change throughout the story. And that's what we're going to focus on. An example I'm giving you is Gru from Despicable Me. He's a great example. In the beginning of the story, he does not really want children. He only adopts the girls because of his plan as a villain. So he's going to use them for no good. But then lessons throughout the story really start to affect him. And by the end, he finds that he actually loves the girls and he wants them to stay. So he's a good example of how a character can really change. So tomorrow we're going to be working on how a character changes. And we're going to be doing that by looking at the plot of the story, focusing on the beginning, middle, and end. And in the beginning, we're going to look at the character's character traits. Then we're going to look about events that occur that cause the character to think about life differently. And then we're going to also look at the end, again, at the character traits. And we're going to compare them to the beginning. How are they different? That is how the character has changed. So, how does character change? Focus on the beginning, middle, and end, and pay attention to cause and effect, problem, solution, and the thoughts, actions, and feelings of the character. Now, I'm going to try it with you. I'm giving you an example here that I've worked on about Ralph. In the story, Ralph tells a story. And here you could see I focused on Ralph at the beginning of the story, and I looked at the text and I found things that they told me. And I saw that Ralph is not confident and doubtful of his ability to write a story in the beginning. And I knew this because the text says that every day at writing time, he thought really hard, but he couldn't think of a story. And that tells me that he's doubtful of his ability. And he also thought to himself, I'll never be a good writer like Daisy, which tells me he's not confident and he doesn't believe in himself. Then I read the story and I saw at the end, Ralph was confident and proud of himself. And I knew this because the text said that Ralph showed his picture because he wasn't embarrassed anymore. And the text also said that this year he writes stories all the time. So I could tell based on those two things that he felt good about himself and that he now is confident and he liked writing stories. So comparing the beginning and the end, that's what tells me how the character changed. Ralph changed because in the beginning he didn't believe in himself and he thought he was a bad writer. And at the end he did believe in himself and he wrote all the time. So that's a big change. Now, the next part of it is thinking why the character changed. And if I look back near the middle of the story and the big climax of the story, I realized he changed because in the climax of the story, the teacher made him tell about a story that he was writing. Now, he's so nervous in front of everybody. And then they started asking him questions, and the questions made him remember what happened. And then he was able to tell an exciting story that everyone clapped for. This made him realize that stories are everywhere. Here's my example. Now it's your turn. I want you to stop this video, pause it, and write down on your whisk paper a quick example of a story you have read where a character changed. Tell us the story and what the character was like in the beginning and what the character was like at the end. It could be a quick one-sentence story, one-sentence summary. Okay, pause it now. Okay. Today we focused on looking at how characters change. And tomorrow we're going to work on activities where we're going to practice analyzing characters and how they change. Now remember, understanding a character's change helps you as a reader because it helps you understand the characters better. It helps you understand the plot better. It helps you understand the conflict of the story, the problem of the story, and the resolution. And the last thing it helps you figure out is the theme. So it helps you understand so many different parts of the story much better. And remember, as you are reading, pay attention to the character traits shown at the beginning and at the end of the story, and think about how that character changes throughout the story. This will help you gain a better understanding of the character, the problem, and the theme. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.